Okay. Hi, Cecilia.
Hi, Elisabeth. How are you doing?
Good.
Yeah, good
You have
to
an
see you.
interesting backdrop to your video.
What do you mean?
You have a nice backdrop to your video, like that plant there.
You mean my background?
Yeah.
Okay, so I do have a nice home office.
Yeah, that looks nice.
Thank you.
Okay, I've released everybody and started recording.
And the doors are open for further participants to join?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, then I would say let's start. A very warm welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone to you all. My name is Franziska. I'm with the SuSanA Secretariat and also part of the Forum practice group. And I am personally very excited that this session is taking place because it gives us, as the SuSanA member and Forum community, a platform for now a verbal exchange in addition to what we are used to, the written format in the Forum. I will take 1 minute to walk you through your options of participation and interaction throughout the next hour. First of all, there is the chat. You can see it by this little speech bubble indicated. Please do feel free to use the chat throughout the session. We will also have a few quiz questions. Please type in your spontaneous answers there. You can also ask immediate questions or needs for clarification in the chat. And those hosts of us who are not presenting at the moment will then address your questions. Secondly, there is the raise the hand function, which is directly next to the chat bubble icon. It's just a raised hand. You can use this function for the discussion, which will take place after each section and in the end. Lastly, we ask you to, during the presentation, stay on mute and turn off your video. Because only the speaker and the presentation should be the video and the screen we should be focusing on. During the presentation, we do very much invite you to unmute yourself, show your video, kind of to ease the interaction a bit. Now let's go to the agenda. What is ahead of us? Can we advance the slide to see the agenda? Thank you. So the inputs will be given by the main forum moderators, Elisabeth, Chaiwe, and Paresh. And after a first introduction to the discussion forum by Elisabeth, Paresh will give us updates about the latest developments this year and last year. Then Elisabeth will present the preliminary results from the forum user survey, and it is still open. The survey link will be copied in the chat, so do feel free to take the survey if you haven't. Then Chaiwe will walk us through some results from a member analysis, which is really interesting to see and something brand new. And lastly, we would like to get your feedback and get into a discussion with you about the future of the forum. So without further ado, I would hand over to Elisabeth to introduce us to the discussion forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Franzi. There was one person in the chat who said they can't hear anything. Sometimes it helps to leave the meeting and come back in. That's the only thing that I can recommend. Also, if you can't see the chat and you can't see that bubble, also again, sometimes it helps if you leave the meeting and come back. I've done that before. Yeah, so let me do a very short introduction to the discussion forum. This is just a few slides to set the scene. And actually, I thought we'd start with a little quiz. And I ask you to please type your answers into the chat. So just quick answers, rough estimates. So there's 2 quiz questions. how many SuSanA members are there, and which is the country with the most SuSanA members. So this is just to see if you guys have found the chat and want to interact a bit with us. Okay, we've got Vishwanath, he started it off. Let's see if he said 20,000 in India. Does anyone else have any guesses? How many SuSanA members have we got? And I should point out that all SuSanA members are automatically forum users. So that's the same database. If you are a SuSanA member, you can use the forum and vice versa. 15,000 in Germany, 5,000 mostly in India. Does somebody else want to have another guess? So we actually, the number of the three estimates for the members, it's actually, if you take the middle, then you're pretty much right. So we've got nearly 13,000 SuSanA members, and India is indeed the country with the most members. That's how it should be, you'd think. It's a big country with many important issues, 2,000 at the moment, and you see here how the numbers have increased since 2011. The goal of the forum, of the discussion forum, is basically to make knowledge, ideas, and debates accessible to everyone. And we want to accelerate learning, facilitate sharing of knowledge, and generally help people to network. So this map, I hope it's clear, it shows just where many of our members are located. So we have, I've put here the 7 countries with the most members. India is first, then USA, Kenya, Germany is fourth. Somebody guessed Germany is the main one. And from the African countries, we've got Kenya and Nigeria and Uganda in the top 7. The characteristics of the forum are shown on this slide. We think that we're offering convenience and efficiency for sharing information. We've also got an option to send posts via email to the forum, which we think is a convenient way. And it's still, some people don't know about that option, so I just wanted to point it out. We make things accessible to anyone with internet access, so everything can be found with internet searches. Also, we want the forum to be inclusive, open, friendly, welcoming. The focus is on sustainable sanitation, given that SuSanA is about sustainable sanitation, but you can't really look at sanitation in isolation. So there's also a lot on topics that are more for the wash sector as a whole. And we actually have a discussion later in this webinar to think whether we should stress a bit more these other topics, like rural water supply, for example. And very important, we would like the forum to be personal and fun and recreating the SuSanA spirit, which is always supposed to be welcoming to new people. The forum has 8 categories, which are listed here. I just wanted to point out the new one that was added this year on initiative by WSSCC, and we've called it Equity and Inclusion. It's that yellow one. And that category is going really well, and lots of interesting discussion threads are taking place there. Here I've listed just what we think the forum is contributing to the wash sector. I won't go through all of that. Networking, exchange platform. We would like it to be a one-stop shop for all sanitation-related topics. Talking about one-stop shop, you'll see later in the surveys that there are other places, and there is a bit of competition and overlap. And we can discuss later how we can improve on that and somehow reduce the overlap potentially. Also, the forum has contributions beyond the wash sector. For example, we can answer questions of non-experts or the general public. So that was my input, that part 1, the general overview. we might have time for a couple of questions if there was anything in the chat. Otherwise, I would hand over now to Paresh, who would do the next part. So I'm looking in the chat. I don't think there was anything, so that's fine. Then let's move on to the next part, I would say. So Paresh, can you continue?
Yes, I'll do that. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what's new in 2020? We have had a new partnership with the WSSCC, and that is being operationalized through a grant to the SCAT Foundation. So that is a more closer and a renewed cooperation between the two, meaning SuSanA and WSSCC. With the help from WSSCC, we now have a few new moderators, including myself, and we'll see more details about that in the following slides. We also have a cooperation between SuSanA and FSMA, which also translates to some additional moderation by one of the FSMA members. Next. Next.
It should already be the next one.
Okay. So what work was carried out in 2020? We've now had continue to have 2 of the 3 new part-time co-moderators. We had 3, now we have 2. All of us are from the Global South. And essentially our hypothesis is that a forum would be much better with several co-moderators, and I will list out other benefits of having more moderators than one. We now have continued funding for main moderator Elisabeth. As Elisabeth mentioned earlier, we have a new forum category on equity and inclusion, which has included us moving some of the threads in other some threads in other categories into equity and inclusion. We've had a very active new subcategory in the first category, health and hygiene and non-domestic situations. This is called COVID and WASH, and we've had it very active in the last 4 months. We also have monthly meetings of the forum practice group, which includes administrators from SCAT and all the moderators and Franzi from the Secretariat, who meet on a monthly basis and discuss issues related to the forum. We are also currently undertaking a discussion forum user survey. We've already had roughly 400 responses, and we'll be discussing that later. Next.
So I've already gone to the next slide for you.
So the new subcategory of equity and inclusion, it has subcategories of people with disabilities, menstrual hygiene and health, gender issues, human right to water and sanitation, sanitation workers and inclusive programming, menstrual hygiene and health and gender issues, and sanitation workers have been the more active categories amongst these subcategories amongst that category. We've seen several IT improvements in the SuSanA in the discussion forum. We have now updated forum software, Kunena. We have the new word like editor, what you see is what you get. We have new statistics page, which includes how many members are there for Global South and Global North. We also have a description or an analysis of gender of members and some interesting other statistics available on the page. We have now added events and events calendar to the forum digest, which is received by members on chosen timeline. And we've added gender field to the registration form to understand our member diversity better. As I said earlier, we now have 3 part-time co-moderators. One is me, Paresh. We had Charlotte for 3 months with us. And we now also have Chaiwe along with Elisabeth. And it's interesting that all the 3 of us, of the co-moderators, have been active in the WASH sector before and continue to be active in the WASH sector along with our roles as co-moderators. Just to remind, what do forum moderators do? Besides what you see on the forum, that is post questions, post make interesting posts, or help take the discussions forward. We write in the background to potential members who can potentially answer questions that are raised in the forum. We encourage activity which is evident through a post, etc. One which probably members do not come to know about is that we ensure that spams, etc., do not reach the forum. And we also try and link our various activities of the forum with the activities of SuSanA otherwise, including the SuSanA library and other meetings like this. As I said earlier, there are several advantages of having more than one moderator, and especially from the Global South. It broadens the content, add a variety in style of responding to questions, grows our network, and we are also able to reach out to more users in other languages. All the 3 moderators, we speak our native languages in addition to English, and that helps us reach out to regional audience. So this is how our number of posts has varied across the years, starting in 11, and we see that there has been a consistent number of posts. There was some rise when we were funded by the Gates Foundation, and now with WSSCC funding also, we are seeing similar number of posts. I think that's the if I'll be happy to take questions, or I'll ask. I don't see anything on the chat.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll ask
yeah.
Elisabeth, please. Thank you.
Yep. So yeah, I'll maybe just wait a moment if anyone wants to say anything, but I suppose the bigger discussion points will come with the next section. So I think we move on to the next section. So I'm going to talk about the preliminary results from the forum user survey. So far we have nearly 400 responses, but we were trying to get 1,000. So that's why we're keeping it open for another week or 2. So if you haven't taken the survey yet, I'm putting the link in here, and if you can multitask, you can do the survey while this presentation is going. So the first question from the survey was, how valuable is the forum for you? And the on the left would be very valuable and on the right not valuable at all. So about 2/3 said it's for them valuable or very valuable. So that's good. 17% said not valuable. Maybe I'll just pick up, there was a question about, is there planning for moderators to Latin America? Okay, Francie said we'll do it later. Okay, good. Yep. This was a question in the survey about the importance of activities. So the chart looks a bit complicated, but I've just highlighted 3 things with those 3 arrows. So we found that all of those activities that we think people do are getting selected as important, and maybe the 2 most important ones is learning and gaining in-depth knowledge and sharing and disseminating information. Interestingly, the one that is maybe slightly less important is taking part in discussions. We asked, how often do you write posts? And here we see that the people who answered the survey are not often writing posts. So 44% said they never write, and 44% they said they occasionally write. And we'll get to the reasons in a moment. So from this slide, you can see most SuSanA members and forum survey participants don't often write posts on the forum. So here are the barriers. Why are they not writing? And we try to, in advance, anticipate what could be the reasons. And this is actually 2 slides. So the first one relates to forum topics and content. And then the next one will be procedures or emotions. So if we just look at the one on topics and content, a lot of people ticked as a reason why they're not writing, I'm unsure whether I can add anything of value compared to people with more expertise, or I'm new and have nothing to say yet. Another one was the one at the top, which says, I have no need to post as I find all my answers from reading other people's posts. And that's an interesting one. And that will probably become more and more relevant because the forum has quite a good search function. So if things have already been discussed, people don't have to repeat the discussion. They can find information just by using the search. But for us, it will seem like, oh, less people are posting. So it might not be they're posting less because our forum is somehow no longer popular. It might be a victim of our own success. And so here are the other barriers related to procedures or emotions. And the biggest one is a lot of people said, I don't have time, I'm too busy. And then we can think about, is there anything we can do to somehow help people when they say, I'm too busy, can they integrate it somehow into their work so that it doesn't feel like an additional burden? And then I've highlighted a few which we could potentially influence, things like the user interface is difficult to use, or I don't know my login and password. Maybe we can somehow send out, I don't know, some forms of reminders to help people with that. This question was to see what other platforms people use for discussions. And you can see there's quite a lot out there that people use: Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp. So there's a bit of competition, and I don't know if you could call it competition or if you can say, well, how can we maybe link in better with those? And I read a few times people saying, oh, these other platforms are easier because I don't need to log in. Things like Facebook, we sort of always logged in, but with SuSanA, people say, I forgot my password, so I can't log in. A little practical thing like that. Then we asked them, how often should the forum moderators spend their time on the following activities? And we listed a few, and the 2 that were picked the most were the ones that are highlighted here in red. So the moderators should make newcomers feel welcome by replying to their posts and write posts to enrich discussions. This is important because some people have said maybe the moderators should just be quiet and not make any posts. But my feeling from these responses is that the the forum users do appreciate the posts that the moderators make, because they can see that we're trying to enrich the discussion and lead it and bring up new ideas and new connections. I'm just going to maybe skip this one to save some time. Satisfaction level with forum moderators, also nice for us to see. 70% of the users are satisfied or very satisfied with us forum moderators. 8% said they're not satisfied. We asked the people about what they think is the ideal number of forum moderators, and the big yellow pie piece is 2 to 4 persons. So we currently have 3 moderators, and a lot of people said 2 to 4 persons is perhaps ideal. So maybe we're already doing it right, but also 30% said, I don't know, I don't mind, unknown. So let's look at some of the shortcomings. And before I show you the results from the survey, I thought I would ask you guys who are here in the webinar to maybe just put some of what you think are shortcomings of the forum into the chat field. If you can't see the chat, you'll have to click on this speech bubble that should let you open a chat window. If that speech bubble is not there, you might have to leave the meeting and come back in. That's what I had to do once before. And maybe while I wait for people to write, I can also see what's recently been said in the chat. Okay, so one person said information overload. Yeah, heard that before. What about others? What other shortcomings of the forum would you like to point out at this point? Yep, maybe you can keep typing, dominated by a few authors. Yep, that can be a problem. Okay, so you can keep typing in the chat, and I'm just going to show you some of the results from the survey. So when we again try to anticipate what could be the shortcomings, and we listed here some possible shortcomings, and this bar chart, just pay attention to the orange bar. So when the orange bar is higher, then people might see it as a problem. So you can see the orange bar, which says it's a problem, is not high, very high for any of them, but the 2 at the end are highlighted. So they find that there's too many forum posts which are about the same old stuff, boring, or by just a few users who post very often. So that's also what Arno put in the chat. And again, on shortcomings, still we asked them about these statements. And what came out there is that people did point out there's too few posts from people in developing countries, and also slow or no responses to my questions. So these are actually 2 things that us moderators can really work on. And that thing about too few posts from people in developing countries, we've analyzed that later. We've even got data for that now. We asked about the thematic focus, and there was over 200 responses. People could tick multiple, but 200 were on, yes, I want to see more on water supply topics. So that's interesting. And I'm just going to skip over this. Here you can see we have a broad range of employer types. So it's nice to see a big chunk for private sector, international NGO, local NGO. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say about the results from the survey so far. So now is again time to ask questions or to put in the chat, or we can continue with the next segment.
I have collected a few questions that came earlier in the chat. Going through chronologically, there was one from Lesego asking about I will just quote, it seems that there are many members join when there is research funding based on your analysis. And I think that was referring to the last slide that Paresh showed, which showed kind of a jump up in member registrations as well as page actions in the beginning of the year and end of last year. And I think partly we can say, yes, that has to do with the new funding that came in. But another strong reason for this jump and spike in member registrations was also that the LinkedIn community of practice that existed and was run by WSSCC, it was kind of transferred or merged to the SuSanA Forum. So the kind of all the members from the LinkedIn group were asked to register in SuSanA and kind of keep up the activities in the forum instead of the LinkedIn group, which will be closed in the future. So kind of the joining forces by WSSCC and the SuSanA Forum caused also this spike in registration and activities, not only the funding coming in. So that was the first question.
Francie, you are breaking. I don't know if it's just my connection.
No, same here. She's
Finn?
frozen.
Same here.
All right.
Maybe meanwhile I could pick up something that Arno said in the chat. He said we might be of interest to have monthly focus update on SDG 6. So it could be related to the slide where I talked about different themes, because I mean SDG 6 is broader than just sanitation. It's also IWRM and transboundary and all that. So it's worth thinking about whether the forum should try to be a little bit more broader or whether it is our strength to be so focused on sustainable sanitation. So I think we maybe continue now with the next section. So that would be Chaiwe presenting the results from the member analysis.
Great, thank you, Elisabeth. And I will proceed with the results of the member analysis. And we'll start it off with a question, a quiz question. So again, as mentioned by Elisabeth, we can simply add our responses in the chat window. So you can see the chat bubble and just put your responses there. So the two questions are, what percentage of our members are female? And then the second question is, what percentage of our members are from the Global South? So looking forward to some responses within the chat window. Okay, so 24% and 50%. Any more? 60, 45%, okay. And then Paulo says 50%, 75%, and we have 33 and 66%. Okay. Okay, ooh, it's still coming. 40%. Any last ones? At least one more? All right, okay, so we can move on. Very spot on, right. Yeah, so that is really, really close. I think a 3% difference from Barry. The percentage of members that are female are actually at 36%, and the percentage of members from the Global South are actually 67%. Yeah, so Barry was really close to accurate. We can move on. So a new way of analysis and disaggregation of the forum activities started in August of 2020. And this just allows us to really see what is really happening within the forum in terms of our membership, in terms of posting, in terms of the different dynamics that constitute the members themselves. So for posts, we have an analysis that focuses on the gender of the person who posted. We're able to see whether the poster is male or female. And it also we also are able or are previewed to their geographic location of the person, whether they're from the Global South or from the North. And then we've also, because now that we're getting more responses or input from the moderators, We also have a way of distinguishing which ones are the moderator posts and which are the normal posts. And this analysis is done per category and is done per year. Our aim is to establish a baseline and then compare that to see what the variations are year to year. And then further, this is going to allow us to have more diversity in participation. So for example, as you can see, there's less representation by women, and would love that women participate more. And then in addition, would also love for more posts to come from the Global South. A lot more will be coming in the next slide. And as you can see there, we have our members in the blue. That blue part of the pie chart suggests that we have a whole bunch of members coming in from the Global South. The red suggests the Global North representation. So we can move on. Yeah, so in case anybody's wondering what we define as the Global South versus Global North, the color there in blue is actually a representation from the Global South, and the gray is what we define as Global North. I'll just do a quick, exercise. It's not in the presentation, but can I get a feel of who is in the chat from the Global South? Just answer with a me. Out of the 19 participants. Okay, so we already have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, okay. I think already that gives a little bit of an impression of what the percentage of representation from the Global South looks like. So obviously we could expect a bit more from this attendance. We can move on. Yeah, so have you ever lived in a developing country? So bulk of the users, again, have lived in the Global South, as you can see from that blue representation. Move on. Yeah, so member analysis by gender, and the survey did give a depiction of how many male representatives we have. And the chart on the left gives you that impression. So you have 65% which are male, and that's not far from the actual statistics that are represented in the membership of the forum. So we have 63% adequately represented as male in the forum. Move on. So this brings us to another quiz question, and you can use the chat again. How many forum posts are typically made per month? And which forum category has the most posts? So I'll just quickly, while you answer, for those that know the categories well, I'll quickly go through the categories, the 8 categories, so you can have an impression. So we have 1 as health and hygiene, 2 is sanitation systems, 3 is attitudes and behaviors, 4 is markets, finance and governance rather. 5 is resource recovery, 6 is equity and inclusiveness, 7 is working groups, and 8 are announcements. So yeah, which forum category has the most posts out of these 8? And how many forum posts are typically made per month? All right, so we have one answer, 30. Oh, 30, okay. And resource recovery, then France says 180 per month. Tolosa says 3, Barry says 200, and sanitation technology, okay. And then Arnold, 200 posts, all right. Yeah, right, so we can move on, I think, to the answer, what our responses are. So actually, I'm quite surprised, and you will be pleasantly surprised to learn that we actually have an average of 2,000 to 3,000 posts a month. And the most favored category is sanitation systems, which is great as well. I actually like this because at the end of the day, this is what the sector is responding to.
I think I just realized I made a mistake there. That was per year.
Okay.
Wait, we can see it in the next. Yeah. So this. Yeah. Sorry, that was per year. So per month it is something like 200. So.
Oh, okay.
Somebody gets sorry.
Yeah. I can see the surprises there. All right, so yeah, we move on to the next slide. So members versus moderators in terms of posting. So we mentioned, and it was mentioned earlier, that there was a funding period for in which Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation were the grantees between 2014 and 2015, and that is when the forum posts were the highest from the members. And this year, as you can see at the end of that first graph, 2020, that we are back to more or less average posts. And then the moderators percentage of posts has increased in 2020, and that obviously we can owe to the increase in the number of moderators on the forum. Move on. Okay, so location of members who have posted by category. So I will not really spend too much time there, but again, you can see based on the pie charts that the Global South is always the darker shade, and there's less posts in each category from the Global South. I'll move on. Then posts per category by females and from the Global South. So for females, we have a preference for certain categories, and as you can see, the highest there is equity and inclusion. Women are the largest posters at 62%. And then we favor attitudes and behaviors as well, which comes in at 47% of the posts versus men who post at least 27% of the posts. And then we also are keen on markets, finance, and governance at 38%, which is great. And then I think it will be also good to see more of a boost and increase in the other categories as well. Then, as earlier mentioned, sanitation systems pulls in the largest post percentage or numbers at 9,534. I would assume that is the total post of all the forum posts that have ever been done in the past. We move to the next. Okay, so gender of members who have posted by category. Again, this is a slide that will be accessible to you. The whole presentation will be accessible to you later. So I won't spend too much time on this and the next slide, but this just gives an overview of what the percentages are and what the numbers look like. Alongside with this is also looking at moderators or members post by category. So you can have an audience or a moment to look at this later on. Then forum posts per member. So if you've ever wondered what people posts look like per individual, we have a vast majority of SuSanA members, which are 80%, that have never posted before, which is quite high. So they will join and they will simply either review or log into the forum from time to time, but never really post whatsoever. And then you have 8% rather, of the members who have made some posts, at least 4 posts or more. And then only 1% of the members have made a post, a lot of posts rather. So 30 posts or more during the duration of their membership. And this type of pattern is very typical on the internet. So it's referred to as the rule of the internet culture. It has been heavily researched, and it so happens that we are not outside or so far from the normal. We can move on. Yeah, so that brings us to the end of our member analysis. And I'm open, or we're now open to a few questions that you can put into the chat bubble. Okay, is that something from Sean? Yeah, so I think Sean is referring to a comment by Elisabeth earlier. Elisabeth, do you want to address that?
Sorry, which comment do you mean? I didn't.
It's not so much. It's just I'm just commenting rather than questioning to respond.
Okay.
What we could maybe do is, because there's only actually 1 or 2 more slides, so maybe we combine the discussion about part 4 and part 5 into the same. So I'm just going to maybe bring up this thing here about the future, and then we have all the discussion together. So this is kind of, I don't really need to repeat that. So this is basically the last slide. So this is now opening it up for everyone, and people can put it in the chat, or you can also raise your hand if you want to say something verbally or even with a video. So what we thought the topics are, we don't have to look at all of them, but any of these you can maybe pick up. So one thing is, should we broaden the scope to also include rural water supply, and which is currently done by RWSN? How can we encourage more people from the Global South to post? Because I don't know if that came out clearly, but we have 2/3 members from the Global South, but only 1/3, roughly, of all the posts are made from Global South people. So there's definitely a complete mismatch there. With the females as well, how could we encourage more females to join and post? What are ways to make the forum more modern? Some people have said the forum is not modern. Do you find that having a high percentage of moderator posts, is that automatically a bad thing, or do you think it could be good or bad? Have you got ideas on how to measure the quality of posts, not just the quantity, and maybe how to deal with overlapping forums such as Facebook or D-group discussions? So does anyone want to get their voice heard, or should we just do it via the chat? If you want to hear your voice or say something, you can raise your hand and then turn on your microphone. Franzi, are you, wait, Dipinda raised his hand. I'm just reading through the chat, but meanwhile, let's hear some people. So is Franzi able to turn them on, or Finn? Maybe turn on.
My internet failed me, unfortunately, and I could join via phone and I can hear you. But I think for unmuting or letting us know who raised the hand, we need Finn's support, if that's possible, because I'm just on my small phone screen now. I'm not much of a help anymore. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. So one who raised the hand was Dipinda.
So Dipinda, I think you're now unmuted.
Yeah, I can unmute actually. Now you can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I see I had made the suggestion earlier also in the capacity development group. I had said that currently this system of one lead and one co-lead does not allow for much kind of a discussion even within the group, or leave alone across the groups. So my suggestion in my group was that even for the capacity development group to have more discussion, there should be at least 4 or 5 co-leads, if not leads. So if we expand the ownership of the group to more people and more active people, not just for the sake of increasing the number, then at least a discussion can be pursued by these active people. Now, currently what is happening, some of the groups, the lead and co-leads also don't contribute much. So it may be better the way the groups are structured, with more participation from members and more leadership from the Global South. That may actually help in activating more discussions. So just expanding the numbers of these group co-leads and leads will, I think, help a lot. Thanks.
Yeah, that's kind of what we've done with the moderators. It used to be just me, and now we've expanded it and have more moderators, and maybe we should have even more. I mean, with the working groups, there's anyway the question, how can we get the working groups to use the forum more? I know you use it, which is great, but a lot of the other working group leads or members, they feels like they don't even know we have a forum. They just don't use it much. Maybe let's hear from Arno next.
Sure, yes. Good afternoon and good evening. So, I get the impression that 80% of the members are there to learn things. And so maybe we should diversify our primary objective, which I think originally was to promote discussion, to create consensus, that sort of thing. And maybe we should try to link to some of the news feeds and even some of the journals. So I'm talking about both kinds of publications. That's academic journals, but even news, because I mean I have Google feeds, and I'm getting some of the keywords are water and sanitation, and you can see there's a lot of stuff happening out there. There's definitely a lot of big investment in the cities in the south, and I don't know if everyone is getting those Google feeds, but we could certainly, with an agreement with an organization like Google have the opportunity to get that as a news component, and then we could even have discussions if we want based on what's behind all this stuff. Who's making the investment, who's going to gain from it, the rural people getting anything, etc., etc. So sort of a dialogue to complement what is actually happening out there in terms of investments, changes in policies. But the other one is the journals, and I think that's a forgotten chapter. Most academics think now that has to be kept secret, but I really think that the journals should come out into the open and stake their claim on the topics that we do, and actually state that they have an interest in what we do. So I think that maybe those are two things for this huge passive audience, 80%, that they might increase their interest and even possibly their capacities to share and to discuss more.
Thank you. That's an interesting one that we hadn't really considered. I've written it down for further thought. Does anyone want to react to what Arno or Dipinder said, or otherwise something that was said in the chat? Does anyone want to react? I'm sort of reading now the comments. Alexandra wrote, we could invite water utilities from developing countries to join. Very good idea. Yeah. Question is how to make it attractive to them, and people always say I'm too busy, I don't have time. So if we can somehow make it into a time-saving activity rather than a time-consuming one, that would be good. Lizogo pointed out we shouldn't overlap with other forums like Facebook. Yeah, I mean, the overlap for me is a big problem. I see people discussing things on Facebook, and some people just prefer there because you don't have to log in and it's maybe more casual, but you cannot really search the archive or anything, so it stays a bit more superficial, I guess. Vishwanath raised his hand. Let's hear from him.
2 points. I agree with Dipinder in terms of the deepening of the discussion, and I also agree with Arno in terms of what he's suggesting in being more inclusive and more open. But I have a peculiar problem. I find that Facebook is actually much more meaningful than these written posts anywhere else. Though it is temporary, but the kind of engagement it seems to draw, especially from the non-sanitation people, is much higher than in these specific sanitation groups. And we need to increase believers. So I believe that SuSanA should invest more on Facebook and try and push that. You're doing it, but you need to push it a bit more. That's my feeling. And we need to push it a bit more. I could also be included as part of SuSanA. The other quick point I wanted to make is much of the sanitation issues I address right now, for example, in my city, or even as a policy at my state, is very local. And sometimes I find that the local needs a deeper discussion at the local level itself, and it takes a lot of energy to put it up for a global audience. And then if you don't find any response from the global audience, you sort of lose the motivation. And there's a vibrant discussion happening right now in my city also, and in other cities, I'm sure. I wonder how we can merge these two and get the vibrancy to come onto the SuSanA forum. It's just a question as an open question.
So this vibrant discussion at the local level, is it by using Facebook at the moment?
And Twitter.
Twitter. So this interesting question about discussions at the local level versus at the global level. So the forum is...
Elisabeth, can I jump into that? I had a thought or a question rather to his comment just now. Yeah, so I'm thinking around the two different discussions. I mean, if you have a discussion at local level and you want to globalize that discussion, I think that the approach is really what is the objective of bringing it to a global audience. And SuSanA is more or less offering you that platform for more of a knowledge management approach. So once it's out there, it's not this basically only for the discussion. It's really offering you that ability to share and preserve that information from that local perspective to the global audience. So I think maybe that's the understanding that I feel has not really reached out there, and that is what distinguishes SuSanA from other forums like Facebook. And on Facebook, that local discussion can happen, but on SuSanA, it should take a very different form, a more sustainable form per se. That would be my immediate contribution.
Well, we could also create sections of the forum. We haven't done that yet, but that are specific to certain countries. We've sort of actually purposefully not done it, but it might be something we could rethink, whether there should be a section on, let's say, India or even southern India, and then there's no longer the ambition to be like have a global audience, but to give people a space if they prefer to feel more like this is going to be a local discussion. But whether we could take them away from Facebook, probably not. So if Facebook does that, then maybe that's just good enough. So unfortunately, I think we don't have much time left, but these points that you've put in the chat, we'll be able to view them afterwards, can't we? They don't, like when we leave the meeting, we can still, because I would like to pick them up and then take them to the forum maybe, or respond and reflect on them.
A quick
Yes,
point,
sure. We'll capture
Elisabeth,
them.
maybe?
Was that Paresh?
Yes.
Yep, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so I don't know if we are doing it enough, certainly in response to what Vishwanath said and what we've been thinking on our own. If we are doing adequate cross-posting to different platforms. Now, we certainly know Twitter and Facebook are used more widely, and I've tried some, but is that adequate, or should we do more cross-posting is a question that I would ask the audience. They could say yes, no, whatever. I mean, or would that help?
Yeah, I saw somebody wrote it in I think it was Barry who had suggested that. And Vishwanath saying it would help.
I see Vishwanath responding, it would help a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cross-posting helps. All right. Well, unfortunately, I mean, this is very helpful for us, the ones who are moderating the forum. So I would love to talk more, but the time is up. So we'll have to continue our conversations on the discussion forum, about the discussion forum. So we'll start a thread there and we can then continue there. And I'm very keen to look through all the notes to the chats after the meeting. So am I doing the closing, or is Franzi, are you doing it?
I could still try. Thank you, everyone. I think it was a really interesting session, so people could have a look behind the scenes, results from the user survey from how the new style group of moderators work. Thank you, Elisabeth, for putting this together. Thank you, Paresh. Thank you, Chaiwe. Thank you, Finn, for supporting from technical aspect. Yeah, I think we can definitely say this is one of the sessions where we can be sure that it will continue in the forum. And I'm looking forward to that. And thanks to all the participants for joining, for your active inputs and kind of food for thought. We will pick that up in our next meeting for sure and discuss it. And let's see when we meet again. I hope it will be soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.